This is the prologue to Winter Queen by Erica Marie Hogan. The Grecian Woods. Flames rose from the rooftops of Sun Kai. Adlai's Sundragon twisted her head around, her horse struggling as they galloped into the woods. Her sister tightened her arms around Adlai's waist, burying her face against the back of her shoulder in fear as they heard the bells in the city begin to clang. Adlai leaned over the horse's neck, urging him forward faster. Frozen wind sliced her face, pulling her hood down from her face to let her hair fly. Adlai gasped in breaths, looking over her shoulder again, waiting to see one of the usurper's soldiers following them. Mireille caught her eye, looking up at her beneath the rim of her hood. Adlai's throat closed, and she turned back just as their horse lost his footing. Mireille screamed as they fell. Adlai grunted when she hit the ground, rolling away from her horse. As quickly as they had fallen, Adlai rose back to her feet, grabbing at the reins before the animal could spook and disappear into the forest. "We are never going to make it," Mireille cried, tears staining her cheeks as she struggled back to her feet. "They will catch us." "No," Adlai smiled gently, pulling her little sister close. Her heart sank into the pit of her stomach. She could hear the horses coming, the men's shouts reaching her even now as they searched the Grecian woods for the two of them. "I know what I must do." "Come, love." Adlai boosted Mireille up into the saddle. "They will not catch you." "Us!" Mireille grabbed for her hand in fear. "No, Mireille." Adlai smiled gently, reaching up to touch her sister's cheek. "This is the only way. You must go on. You must fight, and you must live." "You can't leave me!" Mireille sobbed, bending down to reach for her. "No, I can't." Adlai stepped back. "But you must leave me." Mireille shook her head, falling against the horse's neck. Before she could fight, Adlai slapped the horse, sending them off into the woods with her sister's sobs echoing back to her. Adlai spun away, pulling her hood up over her hair and running deeper into the woods, praying that her sister would not turn around to find her. The usurper's men were coming closer. She could feel them in the distance, horses' hooves making the ground tremble, the animals' screams filling the air. Adlai stumbled, the muck soaking the hem of her skirt, weighing her feet down. Her red hair slipped from beneath her cloak, slapping her in the face as she moved. She knew what secrets the Grecian wood held. She knew what was sheltered among the trees. She had seen her. The air grew colder the further she went, and the fog continued to rise from the ground. Adlai couldn't hear the soldiers any more as she reached out her hands to guide her through the fog, trying desperately to find shelter. Suddenly, her foot caught, and Adlai fell with a cry onto her face. Whimpering, she twisted around, her eyes flooding with tears of panic as she scrambled away. Her blood turned cold as the fog parted, revealing a body. The woman reached out a pale hand, her lips cracked and dry as she turned to look at Adlai. Her hair was white as fresh snow, her eyes bluer than the Faroe Sea. Adlai knew her immediately, despite the red of blood staining her dress. The Winter Queen. Adlai's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths as she lifted her hand to take the woman's icy cold one. Adlai moved closer to hear as the woman's lips moved with quiet words. I can't hear you," Adlai whispered, moving to the woman's side. She slipped her arm around the Winter Queen's shoulders, cradling her against her heart. "From my blood to yours," the Winter Queen said as her crystal lashes fluttered. "I don't understand." Adlai wept, her tears falling on the woman's face. "The Grecian wood is supposed to protect you. Who could have done this to you?" "From my heart to yours," she answered, resting a trembling hand upon Adlai's chest. I don't understand," Adlai repeated. "What are you doing?" "You are in me, and I am in you. You are the snow, the ice, and the wind. The Winter Queen grabbed her hair suddenly. Adelaide gasped as she was pulled downward, feeling the press of the Winter Queen's lips against her ear. You are Winter. Adelaide flew backward, her back arching as she landed on the cold ground, ice rushing through her veins as the sky cleared above her. The stars parted as her lips trembled, the fog lifted as her hair swayed, and the air turned cold as her breath left her. Adelaide surrendered to the darkness. The city of Sunkai. Your Grace. Roderick didn't even turn as he watched 5 of his best riders disappearing into the Grecian wood. He had seen the lone horse leaving the city with 2 riders clinging to each other. He knew who they were, and he knew who had helped them. The Princess Adelaide and Mireille have escaped the Blood Keep, Your Grace. His squire gasped, bending over as he tried to catch his breath. Where is Princess Bray? Roderick murmured as the bells began to shake the city. She is safe. Sir Brecken has taken her into custody down at the stables. Then it was her. She sacrificed her freedom for them. Your Grace, the rightful heir has escaped. The squire's eyes widened. Roderick smiled softly as the moon rose slowly over the Blood Keep, bathing him in white light as he whispered, We will find her, and if we do not, then let the Grecian wood have her. They will never survive out there. The Grecian wood. Brecken Jandry raised a fist, halting his troops on the edge of the clearing. The fog was parting from the ground, the air growing colder as he dismounted, stepping over the rim of mist toward the center of the clearing. His eyes fell upon her then, and his heart stopped. Her golden hair was long, grown nearly to her ankles, and her skin was as white as winter's snow. The ivory dress she wore was torn and bloodied. He knew before he approached that she was dead, and recently so. It's the Winter Queen. His second murmured, coming to his side. She's dead. Brecken turned away. Search the area. The princesses are close. You don't think one of them? His second's eyes rounded. I do not know what to think. Brecken replied. Sir! One of his soldiers raised a hand, pointing to something behind him. She rose from the icy ground, her hair whipping up in the growing breeze, glittering like white diamonds, her eyes the bluest he had ever seen. As she rose, her cloak fell away, and his men fell to their knees when their eyes beheld the golden winter eagle brocaded across the front of her dress. Your Majesty, Brecken murmured as he dropped ever so slowly to one knee. Brecken Jandry. Her voice echoed through the clearing, strong yet gentle. Sir, what's happening? His second whispered beside him. The Winter Queen has passed her powers on to another. Brecken rose again, reaching out his hand to the woman. She placed her fingertips against his palm. Ice quickly gathered on his skin. She is the new Winter Queen.
Ooh, good job.
Thank you. Isn't that exciting stuff? And I love how the fog and the atmosphere of the place just sucks you in. I mean, she just has such a brilliant way of describing everything. Erica's wonderful. Is Miss Erica here? But there she is.
She is.
Yay!
Are you ready to bring her on?
Hi, Erica.
All right,
of
Erica,
course
here we
are.
go.
We're all ready.
Let's see. And you are on, Erica. Let's see if we can hear you. Go ahead and talk.
Hi.
Yay! Hi. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Christy, that was beautiful.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
I almost cried. So
Aw.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for creating this incredible, incredible story. Your imagination just blows me away. Oh my goodness. Now,
Oh, thank you.
I know that you've been a reader all your life.
Yes,
And
very much so.
who introduced you to the story universe?
Oh my goodness. Who introduced me to the story universe?
Did
That is a big question.
your mom read to you?
Well, I mean, I always, since I could read, I always loved reading. I've always been an introvert. I've always been very, not antisocial, but socially anxious. So books were kind of an escape for me for
Sure.
a really long time. And I had to, honestly, I discovered a couple of authors that just pulled me in and made me realize that writing was something that could be, like you say, magical
Yes.
and beautiful. And I love to create stories.
Mm.
So I'm not sure exactly who introduced me to it though.
Well, did
I
your
just kind of happened. I've always, ever since I could read, I've just been reading. And so I just kind of started to step into my own stories along the way. So,
which for a writer is a natural transition, but for most people it isn't. And did your mom and dad read to you or anything like that?
my mom did,
Yeah.
probably. She read to me when I was little. And honestly, I think by the time I really started to really read, I was closer to 10 years old. And that
Mm-hmm.
was when I started reading more on my own. And
Sure.
that's also when I started to write.
At
So,
10.
and of course, as a 10-year-old, the stories were not very good.
Oh, says you.
But
Says you. I mean, you were probably writing at a 20-year-old's level at 10. I mean, we're talking about you here. My goodness, your
I don't
imagination.
think I was, but thank
Oh
you.
no, you know what? We Eric and I had a really great talk on Monday night, and something that stuck with me. You have a new novel out right now, and I'm very honored and privileged to be narrating the Winter Queen series. The Winter Queen series is a tetralogy, right? There's 4 books in the series.
Yes,
Okay.
four books in the series. Yes.
And they are all in print, and they're all available wherever you buy fine books. But Erica has a new release, and I want to make sure we discuss it. It is a very important book called The Good German Girl, and it has been nominated for a prestigious award, correct?
It was a finalist in the Christian Indie Awards, and it was also a category finalist in the Eric Hoffer Awards. So both of them, I was I was surprised. I was kind of shocked, but yes. So it made me very happy.
Now, this book is is something that's very close to your heart, and that goes all the way back to your childhood. At 8 years old, you started watching war documentaries, correct?
Yes. When I was 8, I started watching more films and more documentaries. My father was very passionate about the World War II era, and so he would be watching these things, and I would come into the room and I would sit with him and I would watch them, and I got really involved in that time and in that history. And I think a lot of people they're kind of shocked when I say that I was watching those things when I was 8, because that's heavy subjects to be watching when you're 8. And my parents did monitor it. They made sure I didn't see anything too severe, but I did learn a lot. And like we talked about on Monday, I always tell people I didn't have like big hairy scary monsters in my closet. I had Nazis in my closet.
Yeah.
I would have my mother check my closet for Nazis
Yeah.
at night. That is nervous laughter, by the way, not
I
humor.
know, I
Um,
know, I know.
but so for me, I kind of grew up with a sense of people can be bad. People
Yeah.
can have evil and do evil things.
Hmm.
And it just, instead of deterring me from finding out more, it made me want to know more. I wanted to know more about why. Why did they do this? What were they
Hmm.
thinking? And it developed into a love of that era, the 1940s, and eventually it developed into the Good German Girl. So,
So tell us about Margot and how you were able
Mar-
to develop her.
so Margot is, I think Margot is my dearest character. I love her deeply, um, for her strength and her kindness and her ability to fight for what she believes in. And that is just, it was hard for me to do that as I grew up. A lot of my characters, they actually have similar qualities to what Margot has. And I think it's partly because it's always what I wished I could be in my life and what I was kind of scared to be.
Mm.
Um, but I think the biggest thing about The Good German Girl is that, um, surprisingly, the story doesn't start with Margot. A lot of people, I say this to a lot of people, you think it's going to start with Margot because it's called The Good German Girl. It actually starts with an American soldier named Bernie who lands on Omaha Beach on D-Day. So one thing I hope that came across in the book is that, the reason it's called The Good German Girl is it's not necessarily because it solely centers around Margot as much as it's about who this girl touched. And from Omaha Beach to Auschwitz, she touched so many people and without even knowing it, changed their lives. And she didn't even intend to half the time. She just did. Who she was and what she stood for and who she stood up against led to so changing so many people's lives. And while she couldn't save all of them, while many of them didn't actually make it, um, she still made a difference. And that's in essence why it's called The Good German Girl. So yeah, Margot, I love her. I always feel funny saying that too, because I know she's a character that I created, but for a writer, characters become very real.
They become
Very real when
family.
you're creating them. Yeah, they do. They become your family, they become your best friend.
Yeah.
And Margot's character and so many of the characters in The Good German Girl, they came to be out of the research that I did and out of the stories that I read. Um, I always say I've been writing The Good German Girl for 10 years.
Mm.
And that is because I've always wanted to write a story about the Holocaust. I've always wanted to write about what happened in Auschwitz, about what evil could do, about what a man named Joseph Mengele did do. And every time I would start, I would have an idea and I would be like, maybe this is the one. I would start and I would stop. I would just freeze. And it was because I was so scared I wasn't going to do justice to what happened in those places. And then I read a story about a doctor named, Gisela Pearl. She was a Jewish doctor who was taken to Auschwitz. She lost her entire family. Before she even was arrested, she handed her infant daughter over to people who would protect her. She had to give up her baby to protect her. And she lost the rest of her family in Auschwitz, and she was forced to do heinous things because she was a doctor. That was the only reason that they let her go through, that they didn't send her immediately to, termination, because she was a doctor. And they made her do some horrible things. And when I read her story, I just realized this was it. And her life, what she did when she survived, was just so incredibly inspirational. And it led to several major points that I bring up in The Good German Girl. So there's a book that she actually wrote, called I Was a Doctor in Auschwitz, and it's on Amazon. And it is so difficult to read. It really is. It is very difficult to read, but it is also just a very raw and blunt portrayal of what happened in that camp. And it helped me to finally push through. And I wrote The Good German Girl.
How much did writing this story impact your day-to-day life?
Greatly. Greatly. I had some sleepless nights. There were moments when I was doing my research when I just had to stop and cry, and I was brought very low by what I had to do in order to write this story. And it seems like such a small thing because I was I'm very visual, so a lot of what my research was through either documentaries or reading on my computer and um, borrowing books off of the Amazon. And that seems like such an easy and simple thing to do. You're not experiencing these things yourself, you're just reading about them. But when you come from a standpoint of being a writer and you put so much of yourself into your own writing, when you read, you put so much of yourself into it as well. You become invested. So when you're reading something and you know that it actually happened, it can break you down in so many ways. And that's exactly what happened to me. I, at one point, couldn't even continue writing. I had to just stop. I think I stopped for almost a month because I needed to physically and mentally recover. It broke me down. So doing that kind of research is not easy. And it was really hard.
Now, how did you take care of yourself during this time? How did you nurture your spirit so that you had the strength to do this?
A lot of rest, a lot of prayer. And luckily I had a lot of support too from my family and from my friends. I have some amazing coworkers where I work. And every time I went in and I would tell them what I was going through, they were always there. And they always said, just keep going. You're going to do it. It's going to be great. Just keep going. So having a support system is really important too. If you're going to write about a subject like this, if you're going to write historical fiction that takes you down a road like that, having support from the outside, so important. So
absolutely. And I understand where you're coming from with wanting to make sure that you do justice to your character and see the story through, because you have a responsibility to the story. And I remember hearing at a writers' conference, I think it was Joyce Ellis at Write to Publish, said, nobody can write your story as well as you can. And certainly your heart was so invested in this and all the research. And I think personally that writers read differently. I think we bring an emotional level into what we're reading and process things differently. And I imagine that you worked next to Margot, and you ate lunch next to Margot, and you walked next to Margot. I mean, I can imagine this whole thing. And I'm very impressed and proud of you for being able to see that project through. And I'm not terribly surprised that it was nominated for awards. Will Inman told me almost everything you have written has been nominated for awards. And, I think that says a lot about you. But your humble spirit about it says even more. And for those of you who don't know Will, his pen name is Travis W. Inman. He is an author and the managing editor at Elk Lake why do I keep saying that? Elk Lake Publishing. And he was our first guest on June 4th. So anyway, I would have asked how you conduct your research, but you answered it so beautifully. I think I'll move on to my next question. So what is the most powerful attraction? I mean, you're attracted to storytelling. Is it a compulsion to just put your imagination out there, or is it just that these characters hound you, or what attracts you to storytelling?
I think it is kind of a compulsion. I will get an idea, and I have friends who will tell you I get sometimes too many ideas, and I work on too many projects at once. I was doing that just a few days ago. I had way too many stories open, and I started inserting a character that was from one story into the other. So that wasn't working out very well. But I think it is. It is. It's kind of a compulsion. It's like my brain will start to go a mile a minute.
Yeah.
And I cannot rest until I write it down.
Yeah.
And sometimes once it's on the page, I look at it and I go, what were you thinking? That's not a good idea at all.
But you had to
where
purge the words.
Take that?
Yeah. Do you ever get out your phone and just talk into your voice memos app or anything like that when you have an idea that's coming at you too fast?
What did you say?
Do you ever take out your phone and talk into your voice memos app when you have an idea that's coming at you really fast?
I don't actually, but that's a good idea. Thank you.
I do that.
Christy's tips.
I
I do
don't.
that.
I
Yeah.
usually I'll shoot myself an email.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I do. I've done that
So
too. I've dictated texts to myself, all kinds of stuff. But the app, the voice memos app, is very, very convenient when I've got an idea and I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to forget this. So yeah. I understand where you're coming from, though, totally. But I don't know that other people who aren't writers would understand. And I think that it's really important that we talk a little bit about the writer's heart. I mean, certainly the Holocaust is a sensitive subject to anybody who has any kinds of feeling or understanding of right and wrong. But I think that it's safe to say, from the writers that I know and have had the privilege of working with, that all of us have experienced more than our fair share of struggles. I mean, everyone struggles, but it seems to me there's a depth of emotional pain that happens in the writing life that's different from others. And I know part of that is so that we are able to translate those experiences into stories that touch other people. And I know that you had quite a life-altering struggle when you were young, and that it shaped you into the incredibly imaginative author that you are. So can you tell us a little bit about Denise?
yeah. So I have an older sister, Denise, um, who I love greatly, and she's married now.
Oh.
She's living in Ohio. She's very happy. But when she was around, I want to say 15 or 16, she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And at that time, my parents they were homeschooling us, and we lived in a place in Texas called Adkins. So we were kind of out in the country a ways. We were, pretty far drive from anything in San Antonio. And one day, my sister had what we would later start to call her episodes. She was in incredible pain, and we had to rush her to the hospital. And they later would find out that she had Crohn's disease, and it took them a long time to find that out. They actually had to do exploratory surgery to officially diagnose her. And so it was quite a struggle. She was in and out of the hospital after that for maybe around 3 years. And during that time, I found myself alone a lot because my parents, they had to be with her at the hospital, and I had to be at home. We had pets, we had a house. I had to kind of start doing things that normally I would just be my mom's little assistant for in the past. And it was a great deal, very overwhelming. And I tried not to talk about it too much because all I could think was that how is what I'm going through compared to what my sister's going through. She's in the hospital. She's hooked up to IVs. She's in pain. So what I'm dealing with has to be minimal compared to that. And I was also very helpless because when I could see her, there was really nothing I could do. All I could do was just sit by her, hold her hand. I remember one time I spent a whole day at the hospital with her. I was dropped off in the morning so that my mom could finally go home and take care of herself. And I remember I would just sit on the couch. I had a book, of course. I had a book. And I would watch TV with her. I would get the nurse for her if she needed something. I went down to the cafeteria to get myself some lunch, and I brought it right back up so that she wasn't alone. But during that time, my mom, she started to get really worried because, like I said, we were being homeschooled, and she wasn't able to be at home to help me with my lessons, to teach me. And she started to worry that, I was in high school age at that point, and what was I going to do? Was I going to be able to officially graduate, even from home? And I know that she struggled with that because she started to feel like she was failing because she had to be at the hospital so much with my sister. So what she started to do was she would call me and she would tell me, go into the den where we had like 3 bookcases full of books, all kinds. And she would say, pick a book, doesn't matter which one, pick a book, read it, and write me an essay, because she knew I loved to read. And I would do that. I would pick anything from Shakespeare to Charles Dickens, and I to Jane Austen, who was one of my personal favorites. Um, and I would read a whole book and I would write an essay. And it just fed my love of reading, which I had already had, but it just kind of reinforced that for me and helped develop my creative writing, my imagination. I would start to go in and just start reading books without her even telling me to. And it grew from there. So in a very real way, um, I was creating my own story by being being on my own for so long, and even for years after that, helping my sister, getting her through that, developing her diet and all of that until she went to college. It just kept growing and growing inside of me, and it turned into a book. And by the time my sister graduated and got married, I was contracted by Elk Lake Publishing for my debut novel, The Lost Generation.
Which is set in World War One.
That one is set in World War One.
That's right. Pretty
that
cool.
One's set in World War One.
Well, I can't help but notice that you were reading the classics, which couldn't hurt when it comes to shaping a brilliant writing career and helping you understand how to use the language to its best. Although I think you're doing pretty well, though. You don't use too many exclamation points, and if you're reading Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, they use more than their fair share. So good job. You stayed in the right century. You stayed in the right. And I want to say this too. You're very easy to narrate because clearly you edit aloud, and that is one author tip I would like to issue. Is I can tell it's very easy for me to tell authors who edit aloud, which is one of the things I learned when I was in college about self-editing. And it helps me so much. If you're, my author friends, if you're writing a 30-word sentence, I'm going to be gasping, and I'm going to have to try to figure out a spot where I can put in a natural breath, or else I'll run out of air, and it sounds pretty rough. You don't want your narrator to sound like she got punched in the gut at some point during the sentence. So it helps, and I think that you're easier, and I think because of that, reading aloud, you're able to avoid the 18th century and 19th century trap of a 30 to 40 word sentence with 4 semicolons and 10 exclamation points. So good job.
Thank you.
Are we needing? Do we have another link that's coming now?
Yeah. Do you want me to? Okay. You want to take a break real quick? We'll let Erica go. We'll bring her right back in just a few moments.
Bring her right back, Miss Erica.
Okay. All right. Erica, we're going to cut out and bring you. Just click that
bring you right back.
We'll see you in a few minutes. Okay.
So I'm going to share a little bit of my my narrator's tips and tricks. There are certain indispensable things. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to talk about real equipment tonight as far as what you actually need in order to be a professional narrator. But there are little things that you have to have. The first thing is water. You have to keep water on hand. And I cannot overestimate the value of a good sport bottle. I really like this Gatorade bottle. Just to have a little shot, because you don't want to sit there and be drinking constantly, because then that can mess with the the amount of moisture in your mouth, and you don't want to have to be swallowing constantly. I mean, there's a lot to be mindful of. So the sport bottle is a good thing. Lemon tea, I really like Bigelow's lemon ginger tea. It's very good for your throat. If I'm doing a lot of male voices, it really can grate on my throat, and so that's something it's really, really helpful. Very inexpensive little tip there. And the other thing you cannot do without is lip balm. Do not try to be a narrator without a nice tube of lip balm with you at all times. And I like Burt's Bees. So those are three indispensable things for a narrator, all less than $10. So, okay, hang on one quick second.
Speaking of the water bottle.
Yep. So, who is your target audience?
My target audience.
Yes.
I would say for
the Good German Girl. Let's return to that.
For the good. Okay, we'll start with the Good German Girl. For Good German Girl, I want to say my target audience, where age range is concerned, I would say 18 and up. Just because the subject matter can be really, really heavy and really difficult. I've actually had some people say, actually, maybe 21 and up. I'm like, okay,
yeah, that could be.
Probably coming from my experience of being so young when I started in history, I was like, I think an 18-year-old. But at the same time, you know, there are grown people who can't handle it. It is. I even say, The Good German Girl is not for everybody. But I also wrote it because I wanted to try to appeal to men and women. A lot of my stories before The Good German Girl, I think, were geared a little bit more towards the kind of story that women would like. But having one of the main characters be an American soldier who lands at Omaha Beach, I do throw a lot of action into the mix with that. And we get to see Bernie and his best friend Bruno and how connected they are from having been in this war from the start. And I've had a lot of people say the connection between them and their friendship was just so realistic and so strong. And that's exactly what I intended, because I wanted to write a book that kind of appealed to men and women and that a guy would enjoy as much as a girl would. And so The Good German Girl is kind of, that's kind of the audience, I was hoping for. So
now, I don't know if there are any living World War II veterans. I mean, I know one. He's 96, and you know, bless his heart, he's a wonderful man. But they would be, you know, the ones who would have been very, very young during the war. There might be a few left. But were you able to conduct any research with any living veterans, or did you consult diaries or letters or anything like that? Primary resources.
I was not able to connect with any living veterans myself, but I did, based off of the battles that I wanted to feature in the story, I did find some, you know, firsthand stories from veterans, and that really did help me develop that aspect of the story. I know before we talked a lot about the Holocaust and the research that I did with that. But for the side with Bernie, there were a lot of battles I had to kind of flesh out, and some of them even I couldn't find a lot of information on, so they were a little bit more difficult to go by just because of the journey I wanted Bernie to take. So that was a little harder. That side of it was almost harder than the research I had to do for Auschwitz. But yes, I did find some firsthand accounts of some of the battles and what those men went through. Those veterans have since passed away. But their stories were very moving and very almost as difficult to read about as the Holocaust, what they went through too in that journey and what they suffered, and being pushed to your breaking point like that during some of those battles, especially the Battle of the Bulge. That was some of the most difficult research that I have done.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I've been a student of the American Civil War since I was about 8 years old, so I can relate to that. And yeah, I mean, I've read practically every novel I could get my hands on that was set during that time, but there's a pretty big difference between reading, you know, letters that were written by a veteran and watching a movie. I mean, a fiction, you know, a novel set to film or whatever. But On your Facebook page, you have some four-legged friends that make a lot of appearances. And I have a cat too. And some of the things, my favorite post so far was the one of your cat drinking out of the faucet, or trying to, swatting at that was too funny. Now, how did you find that your feline friends were able to be therapeutic to you when you were doing your writing and your research and everything? Did you find their companionship helpful?
I did. I did. And actually the kitties that are featured now on my Facebook page, I actually didn't have them when I was writing The Good German
Oh
Girl.
my.
I had two others, Sam and Finnick. Sam was 18. He was 18 years
Wow.
old. Yeah, he was an old boy. I'd had him. He was given to me as my 13th birthday present.
Oh my goodness.
And he was a talker. He would walk around the house just telling me all about his day. Um, but he was also such a love. He really
Mm.
was. And Finnick was the cuddle bug. He loved to cuddle. So he also was my little crippled boy. He had a
Oh.
paralyzed paw.
Oh.
So yeah, so thankfully the vet said he didn't have to lose it, but he couldn't feel it at all.
Oh my goodness.
So he walked around and his little paw was turned over like this
Aw.
all the time. Um, but he was the cuddler.
Yeah.
So I had several nights researching The Good German Girl. I remember Finnick would come into my room and he would jump up on the bed and I would cry into his fur.
Mhm.
And he is just there for me.
Yeah.
And Sam would yell at me like he was saying, "Get back to work."
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
know, right? They can keep us accountable.
yeah,
Well,
they can. Um,
Amber sometimes
but it,
contributes and sometimes not so much. I have had to re-record whole sections because Amber likes to crawl behind my studio. You have to create a dead room, and in order to do that, you have to have, for me at least, at my level, I have a lot of quilts hanging up on stage poles and curtain rods and things. And she's figured out how to squeeze her way back behind, and have her nice little dark soft. And I'll hear her snoring, and she sounds an awful lot like a pig. And I'm like editing, and I'm like, what is that sound in the back? Oh my gosh, it's Amber snoring, and I'll have to re-record the whole section. And I have considered sending you a raw, unedited section and be like, Erica would totally laugh at this. I might as well just send her the pig snorting. Nah, I won't.
oh, please do. That would make me laugh. I'd love that.
I think that animals can be very therapeutic to authors in a different way than others. I mean, like Dorinda has horses. Dorinda Babcock, who we featured last week, she has horses, and you can just tell that. When she writes about her horses in her books, it's obvious that she knows how to handle a horse. She knows how to relate to a horse. In the Inventor, she talks about a farrier, taking care of the hooves. I mean, that's not something I would be able to write about with any kind of authority. I just know to stay away from the hooves. But I understand the accountability issue with your cat, because there have been times she's been staring at me and I've thought, Amber must be thinking, what is this woman's problem? She's sitting here alone talking to herself in a dark room. I can't help her anymore. I'm just going to go sleep behind, in my dark space and snore and just leave her alone because she's beyond my help. So anyway, okay. So if people want to connect with you, what is the easiest and best way?
Oh, easiest way would probably be through my Facebook page. I am on Facebook probably more than the rest of my social media, which probably isn't exactly a good thing, but that's where I share a lot of my information. And so I'm on there as Erica Marie Hogan, author. If you send me a friend request to my personal page, I might not accept it,
Yeah,
just because if you want to connect with me through my books, my profile for that is kind of my go-to. I send people over there a lot.
sure, sure.
Um, but I share a lot of the same information on both pages. So just my author page is more geared towards my books, towards my writing, that kind of thing.
Is it Erica Marie
So,
Hogan,
but
author?
Hmm.
Okay.
Erica Marie Hogan, author.
Okay.
I'm also on Twitter though too, so not as
Okay.
often, but sometimes
Okay. And I think you're on Goodreads too. Is that right?
I am. I'm
Okay.
also on Goodreads.
Okay. And just one last question: how did you conduct research for the Winter Queen? Pray tell, Tolkien.
The Winter Queen. That's actually a really interesting story too. So the Winter Queen came to be because I was bored.
Mm.
I was having a really difficult time with another book. I was experiencing major writer's block. I couldn't move forward. And whenever I have writer's block, what I always decide to do is I'm going to write something for fun. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be horrible. It's not going to go anywhere. I'm never going to show it to a publisher, but it'll get my creativity going again and hopefully get me back to the book that I'm actually trying to finish. That's what happened with The Winter Queen. I started writing it for fun completely. And as I was going, I was like, you know what? This would be a good idea. Let me do this. And I'll just throw together a name and call it that. That's how the Grecian Wood got its name. Um, no particular, like, didn't really come from anywhere except my brain. And I wrote it almost to the end, and then I stopped. And then when I was asked to publish The Lost Generation, um, well, no, before that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Um, when the first impressions contest came along in ACFW, I was like, why not?
Yeah.
And I submitted the first 15 pages of Winter Queen, and it finaled. And I was shocked because I sat there like I was just looking for some feedback, really. I was like, I wonder what people would think of it. And it was one of 3 finalists for the first impressions contest in ACFW. And I was stunned because I had written it for fun. I barely edited it at all. And it went somewhere. And because of that recognition, Elklake turned around and said, "We want that one too." When they were contracting me for The Lost Generation, they said, "Send us the one that finaled in that contest too." And I sent it, and they said, "We want this one too. We'll give you a contract for that one too." And after it was published, Deb then sent me another contract for the other 3. So I couldn't believe it. I started this for fun, and now it is a 4-book completed series.
And
So
how many years did it take you
research
to
was
write all of it?
kind of minimal.
It was conducted in the depths of your brain, which seems to be unfathomable. It seems to be, if we had sonar equipment, we wouldn't be able to find the bottom of it because it's just too amazing. And Erica, I hope that you never get to the point where you're not surprised and you're not amazed by your greatness as an author, because I'm afraid that if you do, then you'll lose the magic of your stories and of your imagination. And so I'm glad that God has given you such a beautifully humble spirit, because if I was walking around with that big brain of yours, I don't know, I might get a little bit too big for my britches. So,
Well,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you, and thanks for your
Have
for
her
your
hang
time.
on.
And we have some
Yeah,
questions.
live Q&A section, folks. We're moving into the live Q&A section now. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay,
for,
excellent.
Miss Erica. First,
Oh.
thank you so much for joining us, Erica. I just
Yes,
enjoyed
thank
myself
you.
so much.
It's been wonderful.
And I'm going to remain off camera here because I want to keep the spotlight on you and Christy for the moment. I'm going to play the question guy. There are questions here. Janie Gonzalez wants to know, what is on the horizon for you? What new things are on the horizon for you? And we have a couple more after that. So,
Oh, okay. Hi, Janie. Janie is one of my coworkers. I work with her.
awesome.
So hi, Janie. Thank you. Um, what is on the horizon? Well, right now I'm working on the second book in my League of Extraordinary Women series. That's The Good German Girl was the first book. Book 2 is called The Red Bird in the Tower, and it's about a young woman who was brutally attacked in Russia and it led her to Stalingrad during that battle, at where she was recruited as a sniper. And that time in Russia, so many of the men were being killed that they started recruiting women, and there were Russian women who had their entire um, groups, different groups, whether they were bombers or snipers or just regular soldiers. And our character of Katya, she became embroiled in all of that because of her skill with a rifle. And I'm working on that, and I have been telling Deb for almost a year now that it's almost finished. Katya, Michael, and Alexei have kind of thrown me for a loop with that one, and I am a little bit stuck, but it's getting there. I write a little bit more of it every day, just kind of crawling towards the end. So right now, that's where I'm at. That's what is on the horizon. After that, I will be starting the third book of the series called The Girl from Poughkeepsie, and that is going to be a novel mostly based in the Pacific. So, and which is funny because it's called The Girl from Poughkeepsie, but so not quite there yet.
Keep them guessing. Keep them guessing.
Wow.
Exactly.
Right. The next question comes from Dorinda. You know Dorinda Babcock.
Yay, hi,
Yes.
Dorinda.
Dorinda's asked a really cool question. She says, do book scenes ever come to you in a dream? Do the book scenes ever come to you in a dream?
Yes. Yes. One of the scenes in The Good German Girl actually was a dream. Though some people might have described that one as a nightmare because Joseph Mengele was the villain of the dream. But I had been doing grueling research, and I went to bed. I didn't write a word that night. I went to bed, and I had no idea where I was going to go with it, and it all just formed in my mind. I have had some very vivid dreams involved with The Good German Girl, and even before that, with Winter Queen 2, I had a couple of dreams. The scene in the prologue was a dream of Adley and Mireille riding through the woods. That was a dream. But yes, if as a simple answer to that question, yes, I do. I've had some very vivid dreams that I have been able to, as soon as I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, I will turn on my computer and I will write it really quick. And it becomes sometimes a major part of the book.
Yeah, that's the way you have to do it. I know I get songs that will come to me in the middle of the night, sometimes in a dream form, but most of all, it's like God waking me up and taps me on the shoulder, and I go, yeah, that's a great idea. Let me go back to sleep. And he goes, no, get out of bed. And I find that if I don't get up and go do it right then, I don't know if this happens for you or not, but when I wake up, it's gone. If I didn't document it, it's gone. And God goes,
if I don't put it down,
Nana boo-boo, I told you to get up. All right, last question. Last question that I know of. I don't see any more in here. Comes from Tracy Bradford, and Tracy asks, "What's the most rewarding part of writing and or being an author?"
Good question.
Rewarding. Most rewarding. I think it's all the people that I meet.
Good
Honestly,
answer. Quality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Honestly, I think it is because like I've said, I'm a very big introvert. I am extremely introverted, and I don't like to be in a crowd. I don't like to be in really big social situations. I have a lot of anxiety when it comes to that. But I have met so many people who have been so encouraging since I started writing, and it has just lifted me up and given me more courage. I've gone to, I know it doesn't seem like much, but for me it was a lot. I went to 2 writers' conferences, and they were big writers' conferences, and that was huge for me. So, and that I only was able to do it because I got up the courage from all of the people that I meet. Christy and Brett, you two are
Aw.
two of them.
Oh, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
We're honored. We're honored to be able to partner with you.
Absolutely,
I mean,
100%.
truly. You know,
We were just talking about that today. Quality people. And
absolutely.
the more, well, I don't want to get too deep, but it's just good. It's good stuff, and you're good people, and we look forward to continuing this friendship, both on
Yes,
the professional and the personal
absolutely.
side,
Yes.
with all everybody we met so far, and the people we're yet to meet. But I'll let you go
Absolutely.
ahead.
Absolutely. Well, you know, it's just been a very rich experience, and you know, I've only known you for a few months, so thank you for writing the third ship. So that I could get to know you, because I don't know when you found time to pen that in the midst of The Good German Girl and all the other books that you've been writing. So thank you for including that, because I wouldn't have had a chance to work with you otherwise. And that, if you're not familiar with Wonders of the Galaxy, the audience, Wonders of the Galaxy is a phenomenal anthology of sci-fi stories based on Jesus parables, and Erica tackled the Good Samaritan, and it is such a brilliantly imaginative story, and I just loved it. You know, Eliza is such a great female protagonist, and her heart to help somebody who's in need, an enemy soldier or an enemy in need rather, and it just really is very beautifully handled. So thank you. Well, thanks for being here. And
Yeah, that's it. No more questions.
and you know what? Thanks for stepping outside of your comfort zone to be here, because I'm sure this wasn't easy on you. But you know, you're inspiring other people who struggle with social anxiety. So thank you.
That make you laugh,
Thank you,
did it?
Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you.